Oh, yes.
Welcome back once again, everyone. Today I'm very excited to bring you a review for the brand new Transformers Legacy Core Class Skywarp. For those that don't know, Skywarp is a redeco of the Kingdom Core Class Starscream toy, but this time he trades out Starscream's null rays for a new weapon, something that looks rather akin to a tuning fork that's meant to be combined with the two other Core Class figures from this wave to make one large sword. So, if you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at Skywarp's packaging, then we'll open it up. We'll see Skywarp himself in both vehicle and robot modes. Naturally, I'll be doing plenty of group shots and comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So Skywarp comes in your standard Legacy Core Class packaging, consisting of a little box with a tall peg flap right here. You get a plasticless window where you can see the figure inside. His chest looks a bit untabbed, though it shouldn't really be an issue. Seems just he was packaged a little sloppily. Doesn't seem to be missing any parts, which is good. It's a shame that's a thing we have to consider now, isn't it? Anyway, you can see all your branding right here on the front. You get his name, and then on this flap, we get artwork of his vehicle mode. Flip it to this side, and you get artwork of the robot mode, wielding his tuning fork of doom. I don't know. It says Core Class right there. It's nice artwork. The weapon is just silly. And then on the back, we get renders of Skywarp in both vehicle and robot modes. He takes 17 steps to transform, which means he's no slouch when it comes to the engineering. Again, we see his very strange-looking weapon here. Hopefully the instructions tell us what that's supposed to be called, or maybe his online bio does. Does he have an online bio? He should, right? I don't see a QR code anywhere. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Then on this side, we get the Decepticon version of the Transformers Legacy side panel art. Okay, here are the instructions that come with Skywarp, and you can see a render of him holding his magical tuning fork out in front of him, as well as your branding and the character's name. This first panel here just shows you how to fold his wings back out of the package to give him his proper robot mode. Little how-to for putting his magic tuning fork in his hand. And then the transformation from robot to jet mode, which completes here. And one more panel showing you how to place his completely pointless weapon underneath the nose cone of the jet. And then lastly, we get this call out to combining the three weapons that come with the Core Class figures in this wave, or, possibly the last Core Class figure in Kingdom if you bought Hot Rod there. And it just shows you how to, make this giant sword. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work the way the instructions tell you to, and we will get a look at that toward the end. Oh yeah, and then on the back, you get your QR code for, scanning into the website and getting Skywarp's little bio and tech specs. Okay, now we get to see Skywarp's jet mode, and, as expected, it's just a recolor of Starscream's, but it does have some really, really good paint apps here. They made sure to make this thing as accurate to Skywarp's colors as they could, so you got, the purple striping on the wings, purple tail fins, purple feet/thrusters. Got this nice orange cockpit that really just, stands out amongst all the black here. Silver for the little air intakes. And then, of course, we get our stupid weapon here. So this thing, I don't even know what it's supposed to be, right? I don't know, I guess he can hold it like this. It'll be like a blaster of some sort, similar to Iguanus's. Maybe. Though all the renders and stuff show him holding it up like this, which, what do you do with that? I think I'm going to have him hold it like this, because that just looks dumb. I don't, he's going to tune you to death. I don't know. He does have a, good amount of robot kibble on the underside, just like Starscream, and just like Starscream, he doesn't have any landing gear, so he just kind of rests on this, hip piece, or waist piece, and then the tips of the feet. So, just kind of hangs out like that. But, for a small toy, he's got a pretty solid vehicle mode. I think it works out pretty well and does a good job of looking like a downsized version of, perhaps the Earthrise version of Skywarp. Here is Starscream for comparison. So you can see, very, very different colors. Starscream is always kind of the odd one out, because Skywarp and Thundercrack were pretty much just two colors, whereas Starscream, he's got a little more variety in the coloration there. I don't know, I just always thought he stood out amongst the others. You can see the null rays on Starscream, and our Skywarp does retain, the little ports, so you can plug null rays into them if you want to. It still really kills me it didn't come with them. I mean, would that really have broken the bank, guys? Seriously? Just two little black, right? Well, I know somebody's gonna be like, well, his aren't called null rays. I know they're not. I'm gonna call them null rays. They're null rays. I don't care. So, I mean, they're both solid looking jet modes, at least on the top. The bottom's, pretty compromised. I mean, everything's just kind of hanging out there. You can see the back of their heads. At least for Skywarp, his head blends into the cockpit area. So, yeah, I mean, they're both really good looking. They're both doing their own thing color-wise. I just really wish that Skywarp actually had, the right artillery for this vehicle mode. Okay, now we finally get to see Skywarp's robot mode. And you can see I have him wielding his weapon more like a traditional firearm, because it actually looks like it does something now. Like, that could actually be the barrel. And I'll say the robot mode looks really good. I mean, it's simple, like you'd expect it to be. It has a very, very similar paint mask to Starscream, if not identical. But it nails, all the details that he's supposed to have. He has the purple forearms and hands, purple feet. He's got the silver on his chest, silver face. His eyes, they are painted red, though they may be a little hard to see. And, I mean, he looks good. The only thing that's really holding him back from being great is that he's missing his traditional weapons. As far as the tolerances, everything feels good. His head just rotates on a swivel, ball-jointed shoulders and elbows. Elbows are a little tight, but not too bad. He has the ball-jointed hips. Sorry, can't talk today. Single bend knees that go a little less than 90. And he doesn't have ankle articulation, but his feet are just, molded into a permanent A stance. And a fairly mild one, unlike old Ultra Magnus, who looks like he's doing the splits all the time. And I guess you can, count his wing movement as articulation too. So, he works. He's good for what he is. He just feels a little bit lacking, again, because of the lack of his traditional armaments. And now we get our comparison shot with Starscream. So you can just see, what these two have in common, where they differ. So one thing I notice, as far as the difference of the paint mask, is that Starscream's red on his chest goes all the way down, where Skywarp stops right here and leaves a little bit of black on the bottom. So something I hadn't noticed till now. Nice little touch, helps, separate the two a bit. And, these two, they look really good as a pair. Now the only thing we're missing to complete this trio is obviously Thundercracker. I'm sure we'll get one. It would be unlikely for us not to get a Thundercracker. And I thought, if I remember right, there was a rumored, buzzworthy, core class multi-pack or something. If I had to guess, that's probably where we'd get him. Hopefully that Thundercracker will be, unhindered by this need to have a combining weapon gimmick, and he'll actually get his null rays, or arm cannons, or whatever you want to call them. Of course, that will leave Skywarp as the odd man out, but there were some talks during that last, was it the round table with the designers about, maybe do another accessory pack, and we might get his cannons in that. You never know. It would be an easy one for them to include because they're so small, they're not going to take up much of the budget there. Hopefully they'll actually be cast in black. I mean, the last accessory pack we got, most of the stuff we got was gray, so, was a little lackluster. I would like to see more plastic color variants and more paint apps this time around, but of course then you're talking bringing up the price, and, Hasbro's gonna do what it's gotta do to please its shareholders, so I won't hold my breath too much on that. Now, if you want to get an idea of what he'd look like with his arm cannons or null rays, we could just borrow Starscream's here. The colors will be off, but at least you can see, how fleshed out this guy would look. Put him there. Put it here. Alright. That looks a lot better, doesn't it? He actually looks like he's armed for combat now and ready to go. And I know, people say, oh, well, they had to cut it for budget and this and that, but, this mold is one of the simpler core class molds. It's really not that complex. When you look at something like Iguanus, who is just the absolute star of the core assortment as far as I'm concerned, he has so much more going on, both in size and paint apps and all that. You can't tell me there's not room to spare in the budget for this guy, so it does bother me. But hopefully they'll, come through for us, and maybe we will get those in an accessory pack later, because he feels pretty naked without them. And now we get a group shot of all three of the new Legacy Core Class figures. Now, technically my Hot Rod is the Kingdom release, but the two releases are completely identical, at least as far as the toy's concerned. And these three really make an interesting lineup of just the spectrum of quality across the core class. So you have Hot Rod, who, if you've watched some of my videos, you know I loathe this thing. I think it is the worst core class toy that's ever been made. Then you get Skywarp, who's based off Starscream, which I consider kind of middle of the road, like good, like decent, nothing special. And then this bad boy right here, Iguanus, is like, to me, the pinnacle of what core class can be, at least from what we've seen so far. So interesting little lineup. You go from like bad, good to great. So I guess you could say you get a little bit of all of it in one wave. Now, the moment you guys have probably been waiting for, we can now take a look at the combined weapon mode. So let's go ahead and take the weapons from all three of these guys. Iguanus likes to hold on to his. Let go, buddy. You gotta give it up, man. Take Skywarps. And then lastly, Hot Rods. Also known as Worst Toy. Okay, so we get all three of our weapons here. And per the instructions, the way this goes together, so take Iguanus' weapon, orient it towards you like this, with like the big post facing you. Take Hot Rod's sword and place it in here with this little port facing the same direction as this post here. Just get it in nice and even. And then you're supposed to take Skywarp's weapon with the little red prongs facing away from the rest. And you're supposed to place it in with this little 3mm peg pointing down. But there's a problem you run into. It doesn't fit. This little post right here is too long to actually go in the way that they intend it to go. So you have to offset it and turn it at a bit of an angle to actually get it to go all the way in. And we've seen things like this before where, on the CAD file it all seems good because, actual spatial awareness doesn't really matter there and parts can clip through each other. So what happens is they designed this post to be a little bit too long, and now it can't actually slide in there because it's colliding with these red bits. So unfortunately, you're going to have them hold it in a way to where this is just offset a bit and looking a little funky. I mean, it's not the worst thing ever, but it's really weird that nobody ever caught that. Or maybe they did and they just decided they don't care enough to change it. I don't know, but yeah, kind of annoying. So first, we'll let old Hot Rod hold this since he is like the first character to be depicted holding it on his own package art. And I mean, he may be a bad toy, but the sword does look good with him. It really looks like it works, and I don't know if the sword is supposed to have a name or be anything specific, but it does kind of harken back to the sword of Primus that Hot Rod / Rodimus Prime is known to wield sometimes. Now, obviously, it doesn't look anything like the sword of Primus that came with Rodimus Prime in Kingdom, but, it could just be a reimagining of it. And I will say that this cool-looking weapon does help make Hot Rod look not completely terrible. Next, let's go ahead and we'll give it to Iguanus so we can see him hold it. See how he looks with it. I think his colors lend themselves the best to holding this thing because it's got most of his colors on it. So you can get Iguanus holding it. I also think it looks most proportional to Iguanus because he is the largest figure of the three. Yeah, I think it's probably going to be my favorite. You have an awesome looking figure holding an awesome sword, and it actually scales well with him. So, unsurprisingly, I probably find this combination to be the best. But let's go ahead, and for good measure, and since this is his review, finally give this thing to Skywarp. So we got him set up here, fix his wings and stuff, and turn around. Give it to him just like this. Push it all the way in. Doesn't really want to go. Okay. It looks okay. The colors, they don't really match him much at all, except for the little bit of black on there. And it is quite big for Skywarp. He is, I believe, the shortest of the three. I don't know, is he shorter than Hot Rod? They're about the same height. So he does look pretty diminutive. My personal recommendation, if you're gonna display this thing combined, I would give it to Iguanus. I think it just works very well for him. Yeah, this weapon has a very, almost like cyberpunk or Tron-like appearance to it with the energy blade. and that really matches, Iguanus's look. He's kind of got that light cycle vibe going on, so that's my recommendation. Of course, you can, have whichever character you want hold on to this thing, because they all look pretty cool wielding it. And this completes our look at the new Legacy Skywarp. I will say that amongst the 3 core class figures that are out so far in Legacy, I'd say he's the second best figure with the worst weapon. Again, the thing, it doesn't look cool no matter what you do to it, whether you have him hold it upright and it looks like he's gonna, vibrate you to death, or you have him point it forward, it looks like it might be, maybe a mini railgun if you use your imagination a lot. But, at the end of the day, it's a sword hilt, right? Like, it was designed as a sword hilt first because they were determined to have these combining weapons, and they're just kind of, shoehorning it in here. I find that very disappointing because I remember a few years back the design team stating that they wanted to move away from compromising toys to force them to fit inside of a certain gimmick. And that was after a lot of criticism from Prime Wars, especially like Combiner Wars Times Return, where you had non-combiner characters that were being pigeonholed into combiner spots, or non-headmasters becoming headmasters just because it was part of the line-wide gimmick. And they were like, yeah, we heard the feedback, we're going to try not to do that. Well, apparently that's no longer the case because, they're trying to do this line-wide Energon weapon or combining weapon gimmick for Legacy, and it's forcing characters to either get, like, really weird additional weapons they never had, which isn't, that part's not necessarily bad as long as it's an addition to other things, or worse, replace their classic weapons, or at least, decent-looking weapons, with things that are meant to be slapped together to form different combinations. So, I don't know if somebody had a change of heart, or it could just be a product of the design team, pretty much swapping out since then. Because if you're talking late Prime Wars, early War for Seibertron, a lot of the guys that were on that team are now gone, especially the one that used to be the design lead, John Warden. So it could just be a change in philosophy, and in my opinion, not a great one. Combining weapons are cool, that's cool, I like that, but it shouldn't come at the expense of the figure you're releasing. In this case, Skywarp loses his very iconic weapons to get one of the worst looking accessories I've ever seen. So he really, really got the short end of the stick here, because the other guys, Hot Rod gets a sword, it looks like a sword, and then Iguanus's, it's almost equally as weird looking, but at least they actually made it in a way to where it looks like it has a barrel with an opening and stuff on the end, and it looks like it could be some sort of sci-fi type blaster or something, and it also just complements him very well. This does not do that. It's, this weird fork-shaped thing with this obnoxious red all over the tips of it that really clash with Skywarp, and I'm not a fan of that. And it's a shame because the toy itself is fine. Again, Starscream, not the most amazing core class out there, but he's good. He's a good core figure, so naturally Skywarp's going to be just as good. And I feel that them really shoehorning this gimmick in hurts an otherwise fantastic core figure. Of course, that is just how I feel about this, and I want to know what you all think. Are you bothered by the lack of his null rays or arm cannons, whatever you call them? Do you wish he had included them either with this or instead of this? Or do you not care? I know some people, they're just really, nonchalant about the whole thing. They're like, yeah, well, whatever, he's always had them, he can go without them. And that's a fair stance too, right? You do have to change things up sometimes. Any and all feedback is always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at the new Transformers Legacy Core Class Skywarp. And with all that said, I will see you next time.